A very good afternoon to all the viewers on this virtual platform. Myself, Dr. Rajesh Singh, Associate Professor at Parul Institute of Law, Parul University. First of all, I warm welcome Anjana Ma'am, Honorable Former Justice Anjana Prakash Ma'am. First of all, I warm welcome Madam on this virtual platform, ma'am. Now
Hello.
I will just tell all the viewers and all the students of the Parul Institute of Law, Parul City, the about Madam. Honorable former Justice Anjana Prakash Madam hails from Rohini, and she has done her schooling from the Nasik, Maharashtra, Jamshedpur, Kanpur. And she graduated from Patna Women's College. She joined this profession on 2/2/1982 and worked as a junior to her father-in-law and the eminent lawyer late Braj Kishore Prasad for almost 10 years, during which period she was trained in the criminal law, which was his area of specialization, and therefore inherited the legacy. She has also had the good fortune for working with other distinguished advocates such as Sri V.R. Manohar, Sri Ram Jethmalani, Sri Rajendra Singh, and Sri Shanti Bhushan. In 2004, Patna High Court, in its history, first time designated lady lawyer as a senior advocate, and she was one of the two who were designated. Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash Madam is a former judge of the Patna High Court, and she is now practicing as a senior advocate in the Supreme Court. She is also represented one of the 4 death row convicts in the Nirbhaya gang rape and murder case. She is professionally involved in the legal aid, and she was nominated as a member Bihar Legal Services Authority by the Patna High Court and became a secretary Patna High Court Council for Legal Aid and Advice. She has been actively involved in the free legal aid, juvenile justice, family courts, lok adalats, crime against the woman, and jail administration movement through the various NGOs such as Patna High Court Council for Legal Aid and Advice. She was the sole member for the Eastern region of India of the study groups invited by the government of United States of America in 1999 to visit USA to study the judicial reforms and administration, juvenile justice, law relating to the women, prison administration, law relating to the street children, and she is a regular invitee by the Doordarshan, AIR, and various TV channels for the panel discussions. So on this platform, I warm welcome Anjana Madam, Honorable Justice, and a renowned advocate currently at the Honorable Supreme Court. The topic of this webinar is the sexual harassment of the women at workplace. Now I will just, Madam, tell to our one Madam, the principal of the Polytechnic College, who is looking after our the women development cell. She is used to join, but some network connectivities is unable to join. But right now we have with us Pallavi Dubey, Madam, Dr. Pallavi Dubey. Actually, Madam, she has done PhD in the domestic violence, and she has got 4 national awards, and she is pursuing the postdoctorate degree right now. And ma'am, I just request Pallavi Dubey, Madam, to warm welcome Honorable former Justice Anjana Prakash Madam. Pallavi Dubey, Madam.
Thank you, Rajesh sir. Uh, Very good afternoon. A warm welcome from Parul Institute of Law to Anjana Prakash ma'am. I welcome you from Dr. Akil Sayed sir because he is busy. So I am here to welcome you, ma'am. Over to you, Rajesh sir. Thank you.
Ma'am, first of all, I would like to tell about our university. Ma'am, Parul Institute of Law, Parul City is a renowned university at Vadodara, Gujarat, madam. At our university, we have total 500 students, including there are 100 students, 120 students in the Master of Law, ma'am. And there are 26 students pursuing the PhD in our university, ma'am. So on this note, I will just give this whole session to our eminent speaker and the renowned advocate and the former judge of Patna High Court, respectable Honorable Ma'am Anjana Prakash Madam, on this topic on the sexual harassment of the women at workplace. Madam, over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, Rajesh. Good evening, Pallavi. Good evening to the rest of the participants of the webinar. Uh, it's my privilege to come and join all of you in a discussion, which I hope we will have later on after I finished whatever talk that I have to give. Actually, when lawyers talk about any offense, it is always in a context. No law is made without a context. As we all know, that if there is a crime which is defined, at times, what happens is that the definition of crime also changes. As society progresses or as time goes by, you identify new offenses in the context of a society, a political state. This act in especially, sexual harassment at workplace against women, this is especially, a product of our society, the way we are going, and the product of a constitution that we've given to ourselves. Now, if you look at the object, of this act, you will see that it says that women have a right to equality. And what does equality mean to a woman? Equality means that she should have equal opportunities in every sphere of life. And when, if she has an equal right to pursue her vocation, obviously it should be without any hindrance. It should be without any insecurity. So this act was engineered to ensure that women who work outside their homes, they don't feel insecure in their working environment, and it does not affect them adversely. Because if it affects her adversely, what will happen? Her economic empowerment will go. And if that goes, obviously the right of equality is meaningless. Then, as we all know, there have been several conventions as, the world has progressed. And one of them is Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW as we call it. So Article 11 there also ensures that women have to be empowered. Here, there is a difference between protection and empowerment. You will please bear this in mind. Most of the people, when they talk, they talk about women being the weaker persons and therefore they need protection. It is not a question of protection. It is a question of empowerment. So that a woman feels empowered, that she can assert her equality in all spheres of life. And when she does that, she does not do it as a protection that is given to her, but she does it because the Constitution empowers her right to equality. And that is the difference. People usually mistake, and they think in terms of, any special laws, for example, scheduled caste, for example, Juvenile Justice Act, for example, this sexual harassment, etc. They think, it is because they are the weaker sex, therefore, the weaker section of the society, therefore they need protection. The point is not that. The point is to bring them all equal at par with the rest of the society so that they feel that in no way are they disadvantaged. This one must bear in mind, and especially, people who are studying law, you must, always, whenever there is a discussion, please bear this in mind and assert this point, this is important. Now, whenever as I said, when you talk about the law, you always talk in a context. And when, there is a social context to it, there's sociological context, there is economic context, there are other contexts, psychological, etc., etc. But there is also context of the law by itself. So when you look at the law, you don't extract one section of the law and talk about it. You always see it as a whole, especially these laws which are formulated specially for a section of the society, you always look into it as to what is the aim, the object of the act. And it is in that context you see every section. Now, where, this act itself is concerned, you will notice, that there is workplace has been defined under section 2A. Now, that is very important. What is a workplace? A workplace is not merely somewhere you go to work, it's not that. It has a much wider connotation. And here I would like to, refer to it. It includes any department, organization, undertaking, establishment, enterprise, institution, office, branch, or unit which is established, owned, controlled, or wholly or substantially financed by funds provided directly or indirectly by the appropriate government or the local body or a government company or a corporation or cooperative society. Now, it also goes on to say any private sector organization or a private venture, undertaking, enterprise, etc., 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 including production, supply, sale, distribution, or service. Then it says hospitals or nursing homes. Then any sports institute, stadium, etc., etc. Any place visited by the employee arising out of or during the course of employment, including transportation provided by the employer for undertaking such journey. A dwelling place or a house. Now, this is very important. You look at it, a dwelling place or a house. So you don't differentiate, between an organization which is a formal organization as such. You go on, to the end, saying that even a dwelling house or a house, which can be used as a workplace, even that is covered. So maid servants, etc., who work in our homes, even they are covered under the Sexual Harassment Act. You have to, as an employer, you are duty bound to ensure that, that the person who comes to work in your house, she's well protected. You may not have an internal inquiry committee as such, but the point is, it still defines, when it defines a workplace so widely as to include even a house, a household as a workplace, you have to keep this in mind, that you have empowered the person who comes to work as your maid, who comes to work as your helper, who comes to work as your cook, etc., that person is, that person is empowered enough to demand that she has to be respected. Her right to equality has to be respected. That she has come out of the house for employment and nothing more. And this, if there is any hindrance to it, it means, that she will suffer economically, etc., psychologically, etc. But the right to equality, which has been ensured by the Constitution, that will go. If she is not empowered, or if the employer is not enjoined to ensure her security, in that case, what will happen is that a right to equality will be hampered. So, you have to ensure that the Constitution by itself, what was it? It's a written document so that all of us adhere to it. It is all right, to say that, it's not justiciable. For example, if a maid makes a complaint, where will she go about the employer, not having formed an internal committee, etc., etc., which the act says you must have. But the point is, that you have to bear in mind that a constitution has given everyone a right to equality. And that right to equality has to be respected by everyone, irrespective. And just as you have a right to equality, the person who comes to work for you, even that person has a right to equality. And it is because of the right to equality that, this law has been formulated. So you must bear this in mind. Now, after that, what is there is that, you see the scheme of the act. It says that under section 4, there has to be an internal complaints committee. In lots of situations, it is very important. And every establishment is supposed to have an internal committee, complaints committee, irrespective whether it is, a government funded or it is private, as I read out to you. And yes, one more thing I must say, that, sports institute, stadium, sports complex or competition or games venue, where a residential are not used for training, sports or other activities relating thereto. This is very important. Now, why is this important? You have not gone to the sports complex to be earning anything. But when you get a training, you become a potential earner. So, even a potential earner has been given this right to ensure that the equality clause of the Constitution is adhered to. This is important. You please bear this in mind. So it is not only people who have just come out to work and who are working, but also people who are going to be potential workers. Even they are, even they are insured. Where the internal committees is concerned, it is a very unfortunate situation, that most establishments till date, they have not formed, internal committees. As you must have heard, about the Supreme Court also, there when the Chief Justice was accused of sexual harassment, unfortunately, it transpired that even the Supreme Court, after having set down the Vishakha guidelines, has not, formed a committee itself. So this is the kind of, blatant disregard to the equality clause of the Constitution. You have to keep this, in mind, that how blatant is it that the Supreme Court itself, which is supposed to be the beholder of all laws, protector of all citizens, has itself not evolved a mechanism which it is supposed to, is supposed to have done according to the law. So this is, this is just an example. But this is so blatant that if Supreme Court is doing it, you can well imagine what must be happening, in the other institutions, government, private. Nobody would be listening to all this, And therefore, what happens is that people usually, they are very hesitant to make to make a complaint about it, because they know, when there is no procedure in place, if you make, a complaint, what will happen is that it will work, as some kind of a bomb, which will, the explosive will go everywhere, but it will not, achieve anything. So if a person makes a complaint, what happens after that? There is no redressal. So you may say something. The person may, it requires a lot of courage for a woman to come out and to make a complaint, because the first focus is upon the woman herself. It is this, that why did it happen to her? Why did it not happen to somebody else? So people usually, they focus upon the victim, and it is, the person who is accused goes scot-free, at least from the public scrutiny. People talk, women also talk. They also say, why was she the only person who was singled out for this? Which means that even she was an involved party. She was an accomplice. There was a question of consent also. And when things changed, then, she's made a complaint. This is the usual trend. Now, why is this? Why does this happen? It is also, the failure of a procedure in place is also a major contributor to this kind of, this thing, this mindset. If you had a procedure in place, there would be, this accusation or this focus on the victim herself, as though she was the person responsible. That would be to a large extent, that would be removed. This is what I think. But of course, the society thinks otherwise, otherwise also, in every sexual harassment case, it is always the focus shifts on the victim, and the person who is accused, there is much less focus on that person's criminality. It is this woman's character. It is this woman's, dress. It is this woman's, going out in the evening. All this is, part of the focus. For example, as we've seen, in Mathura, what happened was that when this woman, she was sexually assaulted, no less than the chairperson of the Women's Commission, she went and she said, if this woman had not stepped out of the house after late hours, this would not have happened. So the focus is again on the woman. There, she does not say, if this man had not stepped out of the house after nightfall, this would not have happened. So the responsibility, it interchanges. Even the law has ensured that a woman needs to be protected. You see, the focus is somewhere else. This is how it is, in practice, this is how it is done. And to a large extent, where workplace is concerned, because there is no proper procedure, this is, this is very detrimental to the interests of a woman who makes a complaint. Now, when they say in section 12, the actions which are contemplated, section 10 is, conciliation. Sorry, section 10 is conciliation. It is, very strange that even in such a situation, people think in terms of this, that there could be a scope of conciliation. Now, as I would look at it, I think, it is very insulting for a person to say that once you've been harassed, you can still conciliate for the person. I would think that once you've made out an allegation against a person of no less than sexual harassment, there is no reason why there should be a conciliation. Why should there be a conciliation on this? Is there a conciliation, on other things, which means, when you look at the Indian Penal Code, there are certain offenses which are compoundable, for example, cheating, for example, simple injury. There are certain offenses which are compoundable. Now you bring this sexual harassment to a class of cases where there can be compounding of an offense. There can be conciliation. I don't understand this logic. Either you talk about equality or you don't talk about equality, because we are not talking about a simple hurt. We are talking about sexual harassment because it has, very deep consequences. If something happens to me, there would be other women who will say that, oh, no, I don't want to go and work there because, I would be personally in danger. And even after sexual assault or, sexual harassment has taken place, the track record of the person, if you start thinking, that the person also becomes, completely detract. The consequences of sexual harassment is much more than an ordinary hurt. This has to be kept in mind, and therefore you have brought in this act which says, that equality, you have a right to equality, you have a right to empowerment, you have a right to working, you have a right to working in a safe place, etc., etc. So on the one hand, the law says that, you have to be treated as an equal. On the other hand, you say that doesn't matter. Even if you're not treated an equal, you have, the option of conciliating and saying, doesn't matter. If so, what if I'm, not being treated an equal? For me, this is unpardonable, according to me. Now, there is another section, section 14, which says punishment of wrong and malicious complaint, etc., etc. Okay. Now, there is a lot of, talk about this, that oftentimes, false complaints are made and the person's reputation is put to jeopardy. There is no doubt about it that there could be, there could be instances when false complaints are filed. But when you look at it, in a larger context, you see that every case, every offense is misused. For example, even a murder allegation can be, in fact, misplaced or malicious or false. Even that can be false. So only to group these kind of offenses, sexual offenses, SC/ST Act, etc., that there is, there are more chances of a malicious prosecution. Somehow the other, we are given to understand that there are lots of cases like this. But there could be, lots of cases, in their general offenses also. So there is no reason why you set off these particular laws to emphasize the fact of false prosecutions. Anyway, here, there are consequences also of false prosecutions, just as in the Indian Penal Code. People make out so much about this reputation, etc., that if a man, if his reputation is gone, how will he survive his family? How will he survive his family, his wife, etc., etc.? But similarly, a woman also, if her reputation goes, how will she survive? Then section 15, if you see, it says determination of compensation. This is extremely important. I'll just read it out. For the purpose of determining the same, sums to be paid to the aggrieved woman under clause 2 of subsection 3 of section 13, the internal committee or the local committee, as the case may be, shall have regard to. Now look at this. The mental trauma, pain, suffering, and emotional distress caused to the aggrieved woman. The loss in the career opportunity due to the incident of sexual harassment. Medical expenses incurred by the victim for physical or psychiatric treatment. The trauma can go to the extent of the person, suffering a psychological problems. The income and financial status of the respondent, if this has to also be taken into account. Feasibility of such payment in lump sum or in installments. So when you weigh all these things, here is the concept of victimology, which has been put in place. As we know, now the law of victimology, or the concept of victimology, is gaining center stage where laws are concerned, and they think that victims are not really satisfied merely with the punishment of the accused person. The victim also demands, certain compensations, that person must be personally compensated. Not only the state should, hold that person guilty or not guilty, but also that the victim should get some compensation for the loss that she has suffered. Now, the mental trauma, pain, suffering, and emotional distress caused to the aggrieved woman is a very, very relevant consideration. The loss in the career opportunity. We know for a fact that women have left jobs because they're too scared, to re-enter the same establishment after she's sexually harassed. She's afraid because she knows, that there will be no let up on this. There's no solution to it. Now, section 19 is also, according to me, important, because here it balances, the demands of an employee, the demands of an employee and employer. Whenever you talk about duty, what is the sense, of duty? Duty, in fact, is something which you have to give to the other person because the other person demands it by right. And therefore, I am duty bound to give it. It is, the rights and duties are balanced. So if you have a right, there is a corresponding duty of the other person. If there is a duty, there is a corresponding right of a person. And only then there is a play of duty. So this is how you have to look at it. Section 19, duties of employer. You have to provide a safe working environment at the workplace which shall include safety from the persons coming into contact at the workplace. Display at any conspicuous place in the workplace the penal consequences of sexual harassment. Organize workshops and awareness programs at irregular intervals for sensitizing the employees with the provisions of the Act and orientation programs for the members of the internal committee in the manner as may be prescribed. Now, this is very important. Just as we have, legal awareness exercise everywhere, you have to have this. You have to have, a mechanism in place where you make people aware that these are your rights. Unless there is, a right. So it is, very ironical to say that an establishment is supposed to create an avenue for right so that he can have a corresponding duty. As I said, unless you have a right, there is no duty. If I don't, if there is, obviously, if I don't have a right, you don't have a duty. So here is one thing where the establishment is supposed to make provisions for legal awareness that people know that this is your right. And after that, the establishment will give that person, will be duty bound to give that person that right. So not only this, that, simpliciter, that you have a right, but you also have to create, an avenue for a right. There, then there is under section 26, penalty for non-compliance. Unfortunately, I don't think there is any establishment, including the Supreme Court, which has been pulled up for having not complied, with the provisions of the Act. This is all that I have to say for the present. Let's have a discussion on this.
Yes, ma'am. A very fantastic session by you, ma'am. And our students are delighted and learned various things. Ma'am, we have certain questions from the students which they have put it on my WhatsApp. Ma'am, first question is that do you think that the act has made a difference that is perceived in the ground?
See, when I was younger, and and there used to be newspaper reports about some things, or celebration of Women's Day, etc., some such things. I used to be very cynical. I used to say, okay, what is all this? Nothing is happening, and you're having, Women's Day, International Women's Day celebrations, etc. But then I realized, that actually there is nothing which goes waste. What happens is that, whenever you talk about such things, there is an awareness that you create. And therefore, sooner or later, there will be a difference. There's no doubt about it. So at this point in time, maybe, it's not made so much of a difference. But surely, there is this in the back of the mind that this is something which is an identifiable wrong. How do you identify something which is wrong? For example, it's not like this that sexual harassment at workplace is something new. This has been going on, and everywhere it goes on. But the point is now, once it is identified as a wrong, what happens is that there are two clear opinions on it. You cannot possibly be a sexual abuser and say that you are right under any circumstances. You can't say that. Now, it is an identified wrong. And in that sense, I would say, that sooner or later it's bound to make a difference because it is an identified wrong. In the back of your mind that this is something which is wrong, you're not supposed to do.
Very well explained, ma'am, by you. Ma'am, I have another student who has asked the question, what is the views on the sexual harassment laws not being the gender neutral?
I'm very happy that everyone is talking about it. It is true, that it needs to be gender neutral. Sexual harassment cannot be only, where women are concerned. Sexual harassment can work both ways. And the perpetrator in both cases can be, a male can, torture another male also. It is not like this that the victim is always a woman. So many times, it does happen. There is a very nice video that at one point in time, actually, I lost it somewhere. It is a video. I don't know if you can get hold of it. I thought that I will try to retrieve it, but somehow it slipped my mind.
Okay,
It's a very nice video. Please show it to your children also, Mr. Rajesh. It is, there is this. It is an office environment when the person in authority comes and sits in the chair and he's talking on the phone all rubbish, with somebody else and all that, and he's doing some loose talk. And then he calls, a woman employee. She comes and he says that I'm supposed to be going to the meeting. So fish out that record and all that. So she brings that. He said, no, it's not this that I want. Something else. Then he goes, she goes again and she gets that. Then again, he looks at her and he says, no, this is not what I want and all that. Anyway, she goes a third time, I think, and she brings another one. And then she stands at the table and she says, sir, I know that you've not called me for the report. You've called me because you want to look at my breasts. This is what you want to do. But sir, if you want to really look at it, you can look at it. Your wife also has similar breasts. So why do you want to look at me? There is no reason. And then, everybody in the office, they get around and everybody starts clapping. So this is, we make it out to be as though, this is something we have to be ashamed about our gender, or we have to be conscious about our gender. It's about something about, our breast showing or something, our bra strap showing. It's not that. There is, men and women are physically made differently. That's about it. And you have to look at it like that. You have to be gender neutral in your mind also, not to think in terms of only, women's outer, the physical contours of a body. There is much more in the mind. There is much more in a person. Similarly, here the act here, I think, has faulted, where they have also treated, they've also taken onto consideration the physical contours of a man, of a woman. Fact is that it can also be physical contours of a man, which can be, subject to harassment.
Ma'am, one more question from one of the student. Ma'am, if suppose the internal committee, a woman has lodged a complaint to the internal committee, and internal committee has not taken any action. So, ma'am, can she file a case in the courts?
It says, I believe it says that you can. It says that you can, and court can take cognizance. No court shall take cognizance of any offense punishable and any rules by the save on the complaint made by the aggrieved woman or any person authorized by the internal committee or local committee in this behalf. No court inferior to that of magistrate. So it is this that section 47 does provide, for a complaint to be made by an aggrieved person. I don't know how far that is practicable, or whether there has been, I have done no studies, I don't really know. I have no practical experience on this.
Okay, ma'am. Madam, as you have explained in your lecture that there is a committee, and the committee, there is a meeting for various time. They will conduct the meeting. They will give a presentation to the women for the enhancement of the betterment of the from the employer. Now, madam, what is the basic crux of the employer that they have to be regular checklist? Is there any checklist that they have to check all the parameters?
They should. They
Okay.
should, because it is punishable under law. If they do not follow this, it is punishable under law. But
Yes,
it is another thing that no establishment actually, apart from doing tick mark, I don't think anybody does it. I used to be, a judge in the Patna High Court, and there I remember being part of a committee. But it was more in formality. There was not a single complaint, which came to us about anything at all. In fact, you'll be surprised that even while I was a judge, there was one lady employee who came to me in a personal capacity to me, and she came and she admitted that she was having an affair with her colleague, and it went bad, and she did not want to continue it. And then she didn't want to continue it, and I should, and therefore, and after she said that no to the person he'd been harassing her. So I called the other person, personally, and I told him, see that you have a career, ahead of you. I'm sure you will not want, your name to be spoiled or anything like that. So you better have, think about it as to what you should do. And he said that after today, I'm never going to harass her. So that is how it ended. So you look at it like this, that she was hesitant to go to the internal committee where I was a member, but she had come to me in my personal capacity, of course, as a judge, but as an individual judge, and she came and made a complaint in the sense that she aired out her her insecurities to me, I would say.
Ma'am, it is really a very fantastic session by you, ma'am. You have elaborated with the starting, you have elaborated section 2A, that is the workplace. Then you have also incorporated the dwelling place and houses. Then, ma'am, you have also gone through section 10 and 11. You have also incorporated section 4 also. You have also incorporated section 15 and 26. So, ma'am, it is a really fantastic session, and we really enjoyed this session, madam.
I hope you're
And
not saying it as a formality, Mr. Rajesh.
no,
I hope
ma'am.
you're not saying it as a formality.
No,
I hope
ma'am.
you're not saying it as a formality. I'm
No,
not a
ma'am.
formal person, so please don't say it as a formality. If you think that it was good, please
No,
go ahead.
no,
Otherwise,
no,
no,
ma'am.
don't say it.
Ma'am, we
Don't say
think.
it if you don't think so.
No, ma'am. We think, because that's, I noted each and every point, ma'am, whatever you have stated. So it is
I hope
really
the
a fantastic, ma'am,
children,
and I
I hope
am
the
very
children
much
have
obliged.
benefited.
I'm very much obliged from the Parul Institute of Law and Parul University, madam. And we would like to invite you personally, ma'am, if your permission is there at our university, ma'am. So it is a
Yes.
great privilege, ma'am, and we are very much thankful from our entire Parul Institute of Law, ma'am.
Thank
Thanks
you
a
so
lot.
much. Thank
Thanks a lot,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I'm also thankful to Mr. Jiten Kobhani, sir, who has given a fantastic Facebook Live on this coverage. So I am also thankful to Jiten Kobhani, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Okay,
Bye
ma'am. So we
bye.
can leave. Okay, ma'am.
Bye
Thanks a lot,
bye.
ma'am. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thanks a lot,
Bye.
ma'am.